But when it comes to Bihar, it's often said, you don't cast your vote, you vote for your caste. And that is the first of the X factors that I'm going to look at in Bihar. I'm joined at this moment by special guests. I'm joined by Amitabh Thakur. He's been tracking this election as a psephologist, as a pollster. Javed Ansari has covered elections in Bihar over 3 decades. And I've got Sajjan Kumar, who's been on the ground, also tracking all the numbers. But let's first take a look at that caste factor. Why does caste matter in Bihar? Well, quite simply, this is an important element. Remember, while we talk of Muslim Yadavs and EBCs and other communities, there is this Dalit community. Seats with SC population of 15% or more are 31 in this phase. Now, NDA won 16 of them, Mahagathbandhan won 15. 16%, remember the number, 16% approximately are Dalits. And they belong to different groups. Who wins the Dalit vote could be crucial to who wins Bihar. The caste factor becomes very important. Yadavs traditionally dominated, of course, by the RJD. As you can see, in the last election, the Mahagathbandhan had an edge there. The Nishad community will be important because that's the fishermen community. Here the NDA had a slight edge. The NDA's big edge used to traditionally come among EBCs. Last time it was 41-41. That's how tight the election was. The Muslim-dominated constituencies, MGB won 5, NDA 3. Remember, this is in the first round. Pasmanda, who are backward caste Muslims, the MGB had an edge. And OBCs, which are a significant segment, Mahagathbandhan again had an edge. This is the first round. Amitabh Tiwari, to you. Is this election at the end of the day about caste identities, or are the caste identities slowly melting?
No, it is about caste identities for a large section of the population and especially the male population. I think the female population over the years has shown tendencies to be caste neutral, largely on account of the women-centric schemes and women empowerment schemes which have been launched by Nitish Kumar, and this time also around we have a rupees 10,000 scheme. So what is likely to pan out is that in the last election, the LJP, which has around 5 to 6% vote share and largely controls the Paswan community vote, this time this party is in alliance with the NDA. And if you see the last elections, 21 seats it had pushed JDU to the second or third slot of this 121 because the LJP had scored more votes than victory margin on these 21 seats. So with LJP now and the Paswan community in its fold under NDA, will it now be able to take lead in this phase 1, wherein in 2020 it was lagging? And with the inclusion of the Malla community, again, the MGB would be hoping to dent 2 to 3% vote share. Otherwise, largely most of the caste blocks seem to be veering towards their traditional alliances. The
Right.
women vote, of course, is very, very difficult to predict. And largely the amount of traction which the JDU or the BJP is likely to get on account of this 10,000 scheme among the Muslim and Yadav vote bank, that could also play a key factor.
Okay, let's then look from there to gender, because gender also, as we've seen in Bihar, is a big factor. The gender vote of Bihar, in a moment, we'll try and get that for you, but traditionally gender has become more and more important in a state like Bihar. Do you agree, Sajjan Kumar, who wins the woman vote wins Bihar? Is it about caste, or as Amitabh says, women tend to be more gender neutral?
Yes, Rajdeep, women do tend to be slightly less caste-centric. Caste is one of the factor, but their gendered identity is something that mediates their choice. And if you see the pattern of women, wherever you see you have around 2% or more women voting, and therein you find that 60%, around 60% of the seats in Bihar is won by NDA. So there is a pattern. Two, among the women, you also find a different political psychology. One, they are the unit who are reached out by a specific customized public policy. So money is directly coming to their account, and that since 2006, and that's continuing. So Nitish Kumar has created a constituency. Two, they also have this sort of tendency wherein both the plank of Ration and Shasan. Ration means not just ration, but it also means the welfare schemes and a relative sense of security. And in Bihar, you also find a comparable traction for that. And whenever you ask women on the ground, who do you vote to? They will not name party. They will say either it's Nitish Kumar and somewhere it's Steve. So that way you find that women certainly go beyond caste, and they also take into consideration schemes more than the males. And in Bihar, why Nitish Kumar remains the pivot or the central indispensable figure for NDA and Bihar? Because he is the only leader, both in Bihar and within NDA, who is identified with schemes. You think of Nitish, you think about schemes. You think of Tejashwi, you think of Samrat Chaudhary, you think of any other leader, right? The first mental image comes of their caste, right? And then something else. You think of Nitish Kumar, his caste identity takes a secondary position. On the primary imagery is always his scheme-centric image, and therein comes women who has been nurtured, and therefore he is comparable to leaders like Mamata Banerjee, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Eknath Shinde, etc. So women certainly, and that we have been witnessing on the ground also. It's caste plus, and plus is Nitish schemes.
Okay, Nitish's schemes, particularly from women, we can go back to cycles for girls, we can go back to prohibition. They have created, in a sense, an enduring women's constituency, which is why even in bad times, Nitish Kumar has always got around 15% of the vote. And you look at 2010, 15 and 20, even go back to 2005, where Nitish is, the kursi also comes. So he becomes a major X factor. Then there's the Yuva. We discussed that earlier in the show, but Javed Ansari, this is a young population which has been looking for change. Now you've got Prashant, Kishor also coming into the equation, trying to capitalize on change. Last time Tejashwi appeared to capture the imagination with his promise of 10 lakh jobs. Do you believe that Tejashwi Yadav can overcome the shadow of Jungle Raj with the Prime Minister and others virtually attacking Lalu Prasad and in a way targeting Tejashwi through Lalu? Or will the youth vote crystallize, you believe, around someone like Tejashwi, who is much younger than a Nitish Kumar?
So last time he came very close. 15 seats was the difference between government and opposition. And if the opposition had won 7 more, it would have been even Stevens. Although I still believe that for other reasons, the India would have still formed the government. Having said that, unemployment, migration is a huge issue, and those particularly hit are the youth. They are looking for a way out. If you, in a non-election period, if you go to and talk to anybody in Bihar, this will be one of the major issues. There is concern, everybody talks about it. In the elections, then other factors like caste and others. Earlier, Tejashwi, with his promise of jobs, would have been the main beneficiary of this. But this time, it's Jan Suraj as well. And Prashant Kishor has tried to knock the bottom out of Tejashwi's argument, saying that this business of providing jobs is not feasible. There are only 26 lakh jobs, chief secretary downwards, and how on earth is he going to provide the kind of jobs that he is? So Prashant Kishor has come up with another model, and I do believe that Prashant will eat, just as he will eat into other segments of the votes that would be going to the NDA. He will eat into the youth vote, which logically would have gone to Tejashwi Yadav.
You know, I just want to take you back, Amitabh Tiwari, when I interviewed Prashant Kishor, and we'll run that tomorrow or on Friday. Prashant Kishor made one interesting point. He said, look, this is an election between Yuva and Mahila. Yuva versus Mahila. If the Yuva, particularly the migrant Yuva, can influence their families to vote for Badlav, I have a chance, or certainly you could see a change in Bihar. On the other hand, if the Mahila influences the rest of the family, then it's advantage Nitish Kumar. Do you go along with that, or do you believe Bihar is too fractured for any simplistic such analysis?
No, essentially, Prashant Kishore is largely banking on the support amongst the youth because the 18 to 24 or the Gen Z, what we call, largely consumes everything on social media, and that is where he has got the most amount of traction. But youth is also male and female. So amongst youth also there is a Mahila, and you've also tweeted about it. So what we are seeing in our trackers at Vote Vibe is that he is getting strong support amongst male youth, around 18 to 20%. But when it comes to female youth, this drops to half, around 8 to 10%, largely because of his stance on prohibition. So, what is happening is that even amongst the youth, the Mahila factor is playing a part. So, the Mahila versus youth is also happening in the Gen Z or 18 to 30 age group, which is sort of pulling Prashant Kishore down. His point on the youth now also influencing the family decisions is, I would say, correct to some extent, but in a state like Bihar, where the unemployed youth is also largely dependent upon the parents for his day-to-day needs, it seems that the parents also hold some sway over the youth where they are likely to vote for. So there is a M versus Y within the youth segment itself. And one last point on caste, because I missed that, 58 out of 121 seats which have seen the same caste or community winning in the last three elections. So that's the primacy of caste in Bihar elections.
That's the first 121 seats that go to the polls tomorrow. 58 of those seats have seen the same caste members win the election. But why was it so tight in 2020 is an important in 2020. Take a look at this. 5 of the 121 seats that go tomorrow had margins of less than 500. The NDA won all 5. They won many of those close fights. Less than 1,000. The NDA won 6, the Mahagathbandhan won 2. Remember, so 11 seats that the NDA won, which actually got them a majority, were in margins of 1,000 or less. That's an important factor to note if the election does get triangular. Again, margins less than 3,000 were 19 seats. The NDA won 11, Mahagathbandhan 8. So the NDA was winning tighter contests. And that, in a sense, makes this election at times a tighter call if we had to see what happened in 2020. But remember, 2020 was fought against the backdrop of COVID. Less than 5,000, NDA won 16, MGB 15, so more or less even. The sense one gets, therefore, Sajjan Kumar, is that 2025 may not be 2020 because that was fought against the backdrop of COVID, where there was genuine anger or narazgi. Do you get a sense, therefore, that who wins this time will probably win a little bit more comprehensively like we saw in 2010 and 2015?
Yes, precisely, because mind you, 2020 was something wherein Nitish was active. He was leading from the front, even though there was internal fracture within NDA. So when you are active, people were talking that he has been there for 15 years and Tejashwi was very fresh. There was some sort of a promise and people were thinking that his just singular narrative around youth and employment was percolating on the ground. So you find a binary, a fractured NDA. Nitish Kumar, there was no sympathy because he has triggered aspiration, but people wanted more because of the reference being national growth and Bihar is still lagging. So that was the reference. Now you come to 2025, what you find on the ground, a sort of sympathy, a sort of nostalgia, a sort of memory for Nitish Kumar. People remember, I think people have internalized the fact that this is the farewell election for Nitish Kumar, and therefore you see that people will narrate that whatever has happened, Nitish at least has done something good. Two, why it was close, there are three factors. One, of course, is the dominant Chirag Paswan is splitting away 10 to 11% votes on all the constituency wherein Nitish Kumar was contesting. So that means around 15 to 20,000 votes on an average, right? And two, Tejashwi Yadav for the first time had experimented by giving more non-Yadav, fielding more non-Yadav and EBC candidate in 2023. he aligned in Shahabad, Magad, and Magad area, which is going this time also in the first phase, with CPI, ML, CPI, and CPIM, which had some hold, particularly ML, among the ABCs and Kushwaha. So that's how it got closer. Nitish Kumar's swing ability was compromised, but that we do not see happening this time. So this time, whatever happens, the margin is not supposed to be as close as was in 2020. The number of states witnessing such close is bound to go down, and it is supposed to expected to have a comprehensive victory on the seats this way or that way.
Now, one of the other interesting dynamics of what happens tomorrow is the so-called friendly fights. There's nothing friendly about politics. When you fight an election against your rival, you fight. But the fact is that there are friendly fights also taking place in Bihar this time. Now, take a look at all the friendly fights. First, I want to turn to Congress versus RJD. They're supposed to be allies. Now, at the moment, the friendly fights between the Congress and the RJD is one at the moment. RJD versus VIP, Mukesh Sahni's party, you've got again one friendly fight. Congress versus CPI, which is of course also an ally, you've got them in 3 seats, 2 of which the NDA won last time, 1 was won by the Mahagathbandhan. And the small IIP versus the Congress, 1 seat again won by the NDA. So if I look, many of these seats, if the Mahagathbandhan Javed has to take away from the NDA, the last thing they wanted was an internal fight. Do you get a sense that this is where the BJP has planned strategically better, perhaps because they have a more cohesive organization than the India Alliance, which took a lot of time to get its act together?
Certainly, they frittered away a lot of the momentum that was generated on account of the vote chori yatra. And now this business, this is not, there are no friendly fights. This is sheer lack of political management. They've been hampered by, it's more about when on the eve of every election, they say, oh, these elections are do or die, and therefore we must do whatever it counts. We must sacrifice whatever it takes to try and win this election. But when they say we must sacrifice, they mean everybody else should sacrifice except my party. And this is what you're saying precisely there. These are seats which they have never won, and cold logic stares you in the face that perhaps the only way they have a semblance of a chance, is if they fight together. But even that they're not doing. So what they're actually doing is contesting of who will be either runner-up or who will be number 3 there.
It'll be interesting to see how those elections play. Remember, there can be very fine margins in Bihar. Certainly 2020 showed that. 2025 could be different. Every election is different from the others. I want to thank all my guests for joining us.